My name is Elise, and I'll never forget the day my mother looked me in the eyes and said, "You'll never be as loved as your sister." Those words didn't just sting, they carved a hollow space in my chest, a wound so deep I could feel it pulse with every heartbeat. I was 16, standing in our cramped kitchen, the linoleum cold under my bare feet, the air thick with the scent of burnt toast and her lavender perfume. She didn't yell it. She didn't need to. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, like she was stating the sky was blue. That's what made it worse. It wasn't anger, it was certainty. And in that moment, I learned the truth about my place in our family. I was the shadow, the afterthought, the one who could never measure up to Clara. Clara, my older sister by 3 years, was the sun in our household. Golden hair that caught the light like a halo. A laugh that made strangers smile. And a mind so sharp she'd been accepted into an Ivy League school before she even finished high school. She was the daughter my parents bragged about at church, the one whose debate trophies lined the living room mantel, the one whose name was always followed by a proud nod. "Clara's going to change the world," my father would say, his eyes gleaming, and me, I was just Elise, plain Elise with my messy brown curls, my too quiet voice, and my habit of losing myself in books instead of shining in the spotlight. I wasn't unloved, not exactly, but I was tolerated, the second child who didn't sparkle, who didn't demand attention, who didn't give them anything to boast about. That kitchen moment wasn't the first time I felt it, but it was the one that broke me open. I'd always known Clara was their favorite. It was in the way my mother's face softened when Clara walked into a room, the way my father's rare smiles were reserved for her. But hearing it said out loud so bluntly was like having the ground ripped out from under me. I stood there clutching the edge of the counter, my knuckles white, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. I wanted to scream, to ask why, to demand what I'd done to deserve it. But I didn't. I never did. I just nodded, mumbled something about homework, and slipped upstairs to my room, where I could cry into my pillow without anyone noticing. Our house in that small Ohio town was modest, a 2-story with peeling paint, and a front porch that creaked underfoot. My parents weren't wealthy. Dad worked as a mechanic, Mom as a part-time receptionist, but they poured everything into Clara. Private tutors, summer camps, a used car when she turned 16. I didn't begrudge her those things, not at first. I loved Clara too. She was my big sister, the one who'd sneak me cookies when Mom wasn't looking, who'd let me borrow her favorite scarf. But as we grew older, the gap between us widened. Not because of her, she never lorded it over me, but because of them, my parents. They built her up so high that I became invisible in her shadow. That day in the kitchen, I replayed Mom's words over and over. "You'll never be as loved as your sister." It wasn't just about love, I realized. It was about worth. They didn't think I was worth as much. Not my time, not their effort, not their dreams. I'd always been the quiet one, the one who got good grades, but not spectacular ones, who helped with dishes without being asked, who never caused trouble. I thought that was enough. I thought being good, being kind, was enough to make them see me. But it wasn't, and that truth settled into my bones like a winter chill cold and unyielding. I remember sitting on my bed that night, my knees pulled to my chest, staring at the cracked ceiling. My room was small, cluttered with second-hand furniture and stacks of library books. Clara's room across the hall had a new desk, a laptop, posters of Paris and New York. I didn't hate her for it. I couldn't. But I hated how it made me feel small, unworthy, like I was always begging for scraps of attention. I wondered what it would take to make them look at me the way they looked at her. Would I have to become someone else, someone louder, brighter, better? Or was I doomed to always be the lesser daughter, the one who'd never be enough? The next morning I woke up with puffy eyes and a heaviness in my chest, but I went through the motions. I got dressed, ate my cereal in silence, and walked to school. It was a gray November day, the kind where the clouds seem to press down on you. At school, I was just another face in the crowd. Not popular, not unpopular, just there. My best friend Mia noticed something was off. She always did. "You okay, Elise?" She asked, her brown eyes searching mine as we sat in the cafeteria. I forced a smile and said I was fine. I wasn't ready to tell her. How do you explain that your own mother thinks you're less than your sister? How do you say that out loud without breaking apart? Mia was the one person who made me feel seen. We'd been friends since 5th grade, bonded over our love of old movies and sneaking into the library after hours to read. She was loud where I was quiet, bold where I was cautious, but she never made me feel small. That day, she didn't push me to talk, but she stayed close, sharing her chips and rambling about her latest crush. I was grateful for her, but even her warmth couldn't thaw the cold that had settled inside me. At home, things didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. Mom's words had opened a door I couldn't close. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way Dad barely asked about my day, but lit up when Clara called from college. The way Mom would interrupt me to take Clara's calls even when I was mid-sentence. The way they'd casually mention Clara's future, her law school plans, her bright career while my own dreams were met with vague nods or silence. I wanted to go to college too, maybe study literature or history. But whenever I brought it up, Mom would say, "Let's focus on Clara's applications first. She's got a real shot," as if I didn't. By the time I was 17, the unfairness had become a constant ache. I wasn't just overlooked, I was erased. My parents didn't even bother to hide it anymore. When Clara came home for Thanksgiving, the house transformed. Mom cooked her favorite dishes, Dad hung new curtains, and I was relegated to the sidelines fetching extra chairs or washing dishes while they fawned over her. Clara tried to include me. She'd ask about my books or my classes, but it wasn't enough to bridge the gap. I was drowning in their indifference, and she was too busy being their star to notice. One night after Clara went back to college, I overheard my parents talking in the living room. I was supposed to be asleep, but I'd come downstairs for water. Their voices carried through the thin walls. "Elise will be fine," Mom said. "She's not like Clara. She doesn't need all that attention. She'll figure it out." Dad grunted in agreement. "Yeah, she's a good kid. She'll manage. Like I was a problem to be dealt with, not a daughter to be cherished. I stood frozen in the hallway, my glass of water trembling in my hand. That was the moment I realized they didn't just love Clara more, they didn't believe in me at all. I went back to my room and sat on the floor, my back against the door. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't just sad. They were angry at them, angry at myself for hoping they'd change. I was tired of being invisible, tired of waiting for their approval. I didn't know how, but I swore to myself that night I'd prove them wrong. I'd show them I was more than the shadow they'd made me. I'd make them see me not as Clara's lesser sister, but as Elise, someone worth loving, worth believing in. Have you ever felt like you were invisible to the people who were supposed to love you most? Like no matter what you did, you'd never be enough. I hope you'll stick with me, because this is just the beginning of how I found my way out of that darkness. The weeks after that night in the hallway were like walking through fog, everything blurred, heavy, and suffocating. I'd wake up each morning with my mother's words echoing in my head, "You'll never be as loved as your sister." They clung to me, a shadow I couldn't shake, tainting every moment. I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, pale skin, tired eyes, curls that never stayed in place, and wonder what it was about me that made me so easy to overlook. Was it my face, my voice? Or was it something deeper, something I couldn't change? I felt like a ghost in my own home, drifting through rooms where Clara's absence was louder than my presence. School became my escape, though not because I loved it. It was just somewhere else, a place where I wasn't constantly compared to my sister. But even there, I carried the weight of my parents' indifference. I'd sit in history class, my favorite, staring at the textbook's pages, stories of revolutions, of people who changed the world, and feel a pang of longing. I wanted to be like them to matter, but doubt gnawed at me. What if Mom was right? What if I was destined to be ordinary to manage? While Clara soared, I'd grip my pencil until my fingers ached, trying to push the thought away, but it always crept back. At home, the unfairness was relentless. Christmas came, and while Clara got a new coat and a plane ticket to visit her college friends, I unwrapped a pair of socks and a used novel from the thrift store. I forced a smile, said thank you, but inside I was screaming. It wasn't about the gifts, it was what they meant. Clara was worth extravagance. I was worth scraps. Dad barely looked at me as he handed me the package, already turning to ask Mom if Clara's flight was booked. I slipped upstairs before they could see the tears stinging my eyes. In my room, I threw the socks into a drawer and clutched the novel, its worn pages, a small comfort. At least books didn't judge me. I stopped trying to win their approval after that. I didn't ask about college anymore, didn't share my grades, didn't bother telling them when I aced a history quiz or got picked for the school's literary magazine. What was the point? They'd only nod distracted or worse, compare me to Clara. That's nice, Elise Mom would say, but did you hear Clara's debating at nationals? Every word was a reminder I was less, so I retreated, building walls around my heart, hiding my dreams where they couldn't be dismissed. But those walls didn't stop the pain, they trapped it, letting it fester until I felt like I was drowning. It was Mia who pulled me back from the edge, sweet, fierce Mia with her wild laugh and her knack for knowing when I was spiraling. One freezing January afternoon, we were huddled in the school library, our usual hideout. I was pretending to study, but my mind was replaying that Christmas the socks, the way Dad's eyes slid past me. Mia slammed her math book shut, making me jump. Okay, Elise, enough, she said, her voice sharp but kind. You've been a zombie for weeks. What's going on? I tried to brush it off, but she leaned closer, her eyes locked on mine. Don't lie to me, I know you. I broke then. The words spilled out, jagged and raw, Mom's kitchen confession. Dad's indifference, the socks, the constant shadow of Clara. I told her how I felt, like a mistake, like I'd never be enough. My voice cracked, and tears streamed down my face, smudging the library table. Mia didn't interrupt. She just listened, her hand resting on mine, steady and warm. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said, Elise, they're wrong. You're not less than Clara. You're you, and that's more than enough. But you've got to believe it, or they'll keep breaking you. Her words hit me like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. I wanted to believe her, but it felt impossible. How do you believe you're enough when the people who made you think you're not Mia didn't let me wallow? She dragged me to the library's computer lab, insisting we research scholarships. You want college, right? She said. Then let's make it happen. Screw waiting for your parents. I was too drained to argue, so I followed her, half expecting it to be pointless. But as we scrolled through websites, local grants, essay contests, need-based aid, a tiny spark flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I could do this without them. That spark wasn't enough to heal me, not yet. The pain was still there, sharp and constant. I'd come home to Mom's distracted hums, Dad's grunts, and the endless Clara updates. She's interning at a law firm this summer, Mom announced one night, her voice brimming with pride. I stared at my plate, my mashed potatoes turning cold, and said nothing. But Mia's words echoed. You're you, and that's more than enough. I clung to them, repeating them in my head like a mantra. They didn't erase the hurt, but they gave me something to hold on to, a reason to keep going. I started small. I signed up for an after-school writing club, something I'd always wanted to do, but never dared. The first meeting was terrifying. I sat in the back, clutching my notebook, convinced I didn't belong. But the teacher, Ms. Harper, a woman with kind eyes and a voice like warm honey, read my short story and smiled. Elise, this is beautiful, she said. You have a gift. I almost cried right there. It was the first time in years someone had seen me, really seen me, and thought I was worth something. I went home that night and wrote until my hand cramped, pouring my pain into stories, my dreams into words. Ms. Harper became my second lifeline. She wasn't just a teacher, she was a believer. She'd stay late to talk about my writing, suggesting books, encouraging me to submit to contests. One day she handed me a flyer for a national essay competition with a $5,000 scholarship prize. "This is for you," she said, "right from your heart." I hesitated, doubt creeping in. What if I failed? What if I wasn't good enough, but Ms. Harper's faith was stronger than my fear? I spent weeks crafting that essay, pouring in everything: my loneliness, my anger, my hope. When I mailed it, my hands shook, but for the first time I felt like I was fighting for myself. At home, nothing changed. Clara came home for spring break, and the house revolved around her again. I stayed out of the way, spending evenings at the library or with Mia. One night, I overheard Mom on the phone bragging about Clara's internship. Elise. "Oh, she's fine, quiet as always." Her tone was dismissive, like I was an afterthought. I stood in the dark hallway, my heart twisting, but instead of crying, I felt a new kind of anger, not the helpless kind, but the kind that fuels you. I went to my room, opened my notebook, and wrote, "I am not invisible. I am Elise, and I will be enough." That spring, I turned 18. My birthday passed without fanfare, a card from Mia. A happy birthday from Dad as he rushed out the door, nothing from Mom. I didn't expect more, but it still hurt. I spent the day with Mia, eating cheap pizza and laughing until my sides ached. She gave me a necklace, a tiny silver star on a chain. "For the star you are," she said. I wore it every day after that, a reminder that someone believed in me, even if my family didn't. By summer, I was different, not healed, but stronger. The essay contest results were still months away, but I'd applied for local scholarships, helped Ms. Harper start a school literary journal, and even tutored younger kids for extra cash. Each step felt like a rebellion against my parents' low expectations. I wasn't Clara, and I didn't want to be. I was Elise, and I was starting to believe that was enough. Have you ever had someone believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? Someone who saw your light when you were lost in the dark? That's what Mia and Ms. Harper did for me, and I hope you've got someone like that too. The summer before my senior year was a turning point, though it didn't feel like it at the time. I was 18, caught between the girl who'd cried herself to sleep over her mother's words and the woman I was trying to become. The pain of being the lesser daughter hadn't faded. It was still a sharp ache in my chest, flaring up every time I walked into our house and saw Clara's trophies gleaming on the mantel. But something was shifting inside me, a quiet strength, growing like a seedling in cracked pavement. I wasn't sure what it would become, but I clung to it, desperate for anything that felt like hope. I spent most of that summer working, not the glamorous internships Clara bragged about, but a part-time job at the local bookstore shelving novels and ringing up customers. The pay was barely above minimum wage, but it was my money. My parents couldn't claim money that didn't come with Clara's name attached. I'd walk home after my shifts, the Ohio sun dipping low, my sneakers scuffing the sidewalk, and feel a flicker of pride. Each paycheck was a brick in the wall. I was building a wall to shield me from their indifference. I saved every cent, hiding the cash in an old tin box under my bed next to the star necklace Mia had given me. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Home was still a minefield. Mom and Dad were consumed with Clara's upcoming sophomore year at college. They'd spend evenings on the phone with her planning her class schedule, debating whether she should join a sorority. I'd sit at the kitchen table pretending to do homework while their voices filled the room with excitement I was never part of. One night Mom hung up and turned to me almost as an afterthought. "Elise, have you thought about college at all?" Her tone was casual, like she was asking about the weather. I froze my pencil, hovering over my notebook. It was the first time in months she'd asked about my future. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm looking at scholarships." She nodded, distracted, already reaching for her coffee mug. "That's good, just don't get your hopes up. College isn't for everyone." My stomach twisted, but I didn't argue. I just went to my room and added another $1 to my tin box, promising myself I'd prove her wrong. Mia was my anchor through those months. We'd meet at the diner after my bookstore shifts, splitting a plate of fries and dreaming about the future. She wanted to be a journalist chasing stories across the globe, and she'd talk with such fire, it made me believe anything was possible. "You're going to college, Elise," she'd say, pointing a fry at me. "You're too smart not to. And when you're a famous writer, I'll be your biggest fan." I'd laugh, but her belief in me was like oxygen, keeping me afloat when I felt like sinking. She'd push me to check scholarship websites, read my essays, and even helped me practice for the SATs in her messy bedroom, surrounded by posters of rock bands and half-empty coffee mugs. Ms. Harper, too, kept me grounded. She'd become more than a teacher. She was a mentor, someone who saw potential in me I couldn't yet see in myself. At the writing club, she'd pull me aside to talk about my stories, her feedback gentle but honest. "Your voice is powerful, Elise," she'd say. "It's raw, real. Don't hide it." One afternoon, she invited me to her office, a cozy room filled with books and framed quotes. She handed me a thick envelope. "This came for you, she said, her eyes twinkling. My heart stopped. It was from the national essay contest I'd entered months ago. My hands shook as I opened it, Ms. Harper watching quietly. Inside was a letter I'd won second place. Not first, but second, with a $2,000 scholarship and an invitation to a writer's workshop in Chicago. I burst into tears, not just from joy, but from relief. Someone somewhere thought I was worth something. I didn't tell my parents. I couldn't. The thought of their half-hearted, "That's nice or worse," a comparison to Clara, was unbearable. Instead, I told Mia, who screamed and hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. We celebrated with milkshakes at the diner, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward, not just surviving. The scholarship wasn't enough to cover college, but it was a step proof I could do this on my own. I added the check to my tin box, the weight of it making my dreams feel a little more real. But the struggle was far from over. Senior year loomed, and with it, the pressure of college applications. I'd lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What if I didn't get in anywhere? What if Mom was right and college wasn't for me? The doubt was a constant companion, whispering that I'd never escape Clara's shadow. I'd touch the star necklace and think of Mia's words. "You're you, and that's more than enough." It helped, but it didn't silence the fear. At school, I threw myself into my studies and the literary journal Miss Harper had started. I was the assistant editor, a role that felt both thrilling and terrifying. I'd spend hours after school designing layouts, editing poems, and arguing with the team about font choices. It was exhausting, but it was mine, a space where I wasn't Clara's sister, just Elise. The other students respected me, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. One day, a junior named Sarah, shy and awkward like I'd been, thanked me for editing her poem. "You made it sound like me, but better," she said. I smiled, my heart swelling. Maybe I was good at this. Maybe I could be more than I'd been told. Home, though, remained a battlefield. Clara came back for Thanksgiving, and the house became a shrine to her again. Mom cooked her favorite pecan pie. Dad hung Christmas lights early because she asked. I tried to stay invisible, but it was impossible. At dinner, Clara talked about her law school plans. Her voice bright while my parents hung on every word. I pushed my food around my plate, my appetite gone. Then Mom turned to me, her smile fading. "Elise, you're so quiet. Don't you have anything to share?" The table went silent. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for me to prove I was nothing special. I swallowed hard and said I won a scholarship. For writing. Clara's face lit up. "That's amazing, Elise." But Mom just nodded. "That's nice. How much is it?" When I said $2,000, she shrugged. "Well, it's a start." Dad didn't even look up from his plate. I excused myself and cried in my room, the star necklace cold against my skin. That moment hardened something in me. I was done hoping for their pride. I didn't need it. I had Mia, Ms. Harper, the writing club, and that $2,000 check. I had myself. So I kept going. I applied to colleges, small ones, mostly state schools where scholarships were more likely. I wrote essays that bled with honesty about growing up in Clara's shadow, about fighting to be seen. Ms. Harper read every draft, her red pen gentle but precise. Mia quizzed me on vocab, made me laugh when I was stressed, and reminded me I was more than my parents' disappointment. By spring, I was exhausted but determined. I'd saved $1,500 from the bookstore, won another small scholarship for a local poetry contest, and gotten into 2 colleges with partial aid. It wasn't the Ivy League, but it was mine. I hadn't told my parents yet I wasn't ready for their shrugs or their "don't get your hopes up." Instead, I told Ms. Harper, who hugged me and said, "I'm so proud of you, Elise. You're going to do great things." I believed her not because I was sure of myself, but because she was sure of me. As graduation approached, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. I was still the girl who'd cried in the hallway, but I was also the girl who'd won scholarships, who'd found her voice in writing, who'd built a life outside her family's neglect. I wasn't free of their shadow, not yet, but I was stepping into the light one cheeky step at a time. Have you ever fought for something no one else believed you could have? Something you had to prove to yourself? First, I was just starting to learn what that felt like, and I hope you're fighting for your own light too. Graduation day was supposed to feel like a victory, but it tasted bittersweet, like a promise half kept. I stood in my cap and gown, the June sun warm on my face, clutching my diploma as the crowd cheered. Around me, families hugged, cameras flashed, and laughter filled the air. But my parents were late, stuck in traffic, from picking Clara up at the airport. When they finally arrived, Mom gave me a quick hug, her eyes already on Clara, who was waving from the bleachers. "We're so proud," Dad said, but his smile was distracted, his gaze drifting to my sister. I gripped the star necklace Mia had given me, its edges biting into my palm, and told myself it didn't matter. I'd gotten here without them. I'd earned this. That summer, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved to a small state college 3 hours away. It wasn't prestigious like Clara's Ivy League, but it was mine, paid for with scholarships. My bookstore savings and a part-time job I'd lined up at the campus library. Leaving home felt like shedding a too tight skin. I was scared, terrified really, but also free. For the first time, I wasn't living in Clara's shadow. I was just Elise, a freshman with a dorm room, a meal plan, and a chance to start over. I hung Mia's necklace on my desk lamp, a reminder of who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. College was harder than I'd expected. The classes were tough, the workload relentless, and I was surrounded by students who seemed to know exactly who they were. I felt like an imposter, a small-town girl with a tin box of savings and a heart full of doubts. But I'd learned to keep going, to push through the fear. I majored in English, diving into literature and writing courses that felt like coming home. My professors noticed my work, especially Dr. Nguyen, a fierce woman with a knack for spotting potential. She'd mark my essays with comments like, "Your voice is compelling, keep honing it." Her praise was oxygen fueling me to work harder, to stay up late perfecting papers, to raise my hand in class even when my voice shook. I didn't go home that first Thanksgiving. I told my parents I had to work, which was half true. The truth was I couldn't face another holiday where Clara was the star and I was the extra. Mom sounded relieved on the phone. "Oh, that's fine, Elise. Clara's bringing her boyfriend, so it'll be crowded anyway." I hung up my throat tight and spent the day with Mia, who'd driven up to visit. We ate instant noodles in my dorm, watched old movies, and laughed until we cried. "You're killing it, Elise," she said, her eyes shining. "You're out here building your own life." I hugged her, grateful for her faith, but part of me still ached for the family I'd never had. By spring, I'd found my rhythm. I joined the campus literary magazine, not as an assistant this time, but as a staff writer. My first published story, a quiet piece about a girl searching for her place in a world that didn't see her, got attention. Classmates stopped me in the hall to say they'd read it, that it made them feel something. One girl, a senior, said, "I cried reading your story. It's like you wrote my life." I blushed, unsure how to respond, but inside I was soaring. My words mattered. They reached people. They made me feel seen in a way my family never had. That summer, I stayed on campus working full-time at the library and taking a writing workshop Dr. Nguyen recommended. It was grueling long hours, endless revisions, critiques that stung, but it was also exhilarating. I was surrounded by writers who took me seriously, who argued over commas and metaphors like they were life and death. One night after a workshop, a classmate named Javier invited me for coffee. He was a poet, intense and kind, with eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Your stories have this rawness," he said, stirring his latte, "like you're not afraid to bleed on the page." I laughed, nervous, but his words stayed with me. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was letting myself be seen, wounds and all. Back home, things were unraveling, though I didn't know it yet. Mom called occasionally, her voice clipped always about Clara. "She's applying to law school," she'd say, or "she's so busy with her internship." I'd murmur responses, my heart sinking. They never asked about me, not my classes, not my writing, not my life. One call Mom mentioned they were struggling with the mortgage. "It's tight," she said, almost to herself. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down. I was barely scraping by, living on ramen and library wages. I couldn't fix their problems, not yet. Sophomore year, I hit my stride. I became co-editor of the literary magazine, a role that came with a small stipend and a desk in the English department. I was good at it, organizing submissions, mentoring younger writers, designing issues that won campus awards. Dr. Nguyen nominated me for a writing fellowship, a $3,000 grant for promising young authors. I didn't win, but the nomination alone was enough to make me cry. Someone thought I was promising. Someone saw me as more than Clara's shadow. I started submitting my work beyond campus, short stories to literary journals, essays to online magazines. Most were rejected, but a few got accepted. One a piece about growing up invisible in a family that worshipped perfection went viral on a small literary site. I woke up to hundreds of comments, strangers saying my words resonated, that they'd felt the same pain. I read them through tears, my laptop glowing in the dark. I wasn't alone. My story, my real, messy, painful story, was touching people I'd never meet. It was the first time I realized my voice could be a bridge, connecting my hurt to someone else's healing. Javier became a closer friend, someone I could talk to about writing and life. He'd grown up in a loud, chaotic family, the middle child of 5, always overlooked. "I get it," he told me one night, sitting on the library steps. "Feeling like you're shouting into a void, but you're not Elise. You're writing, it's your way out." He wasn't wrong. Every story I wrote, every rejection I survived, every acceptance I earned was a step towards something bigger. I was building a life not just for me, but for the girl who'd cried in her room, believing she'd never be enough. I didn't hear from my parents much that year. Clara's law school applications were their focus, and I was an afterthought. When I did go home for Christmas, it was a mistake. The house felt smaller, colder. Clara was there, glowing with news of her acceptance to a top law school. Mom and Dad fawned over her, barely noticing me. At dinner, I mentioned my magazine role, hoping for a flicker of pride. Mom nodded absently. "That's nice, Elise. Clara, tell us about your scholarship." I left early, claiming a work deadline, and cried in my dorm, the star necklace heavy around my neck. But I didn't break. I was different now, stronger, surer. I threw myself into junior year, taking on more responsibility at the magazine, landing a paid internship at a local literary press. The internship was a game changer. I edited manuscripts, met authors, learned the business of publishing. My boss, a sharp woman named Rachel, saw something in me. "You're meticulous," she said, "and you've got an eye for stories that matter." She gave me bigger projects, trusted me with deadlines, and by spring offered me a part-time job. It paid enough to ease my financial strain, letting me save for the first time since leaving home. I was changing inside and out. I stood taller, spoke louder, smiled more. I wasn't the shy girl who'd hidden in the back of the writing club. I was Elise, the editor, the writer, the woman who'd fought for every inch of her place in the world. I still carried the pain of my family's neglect, but it wasn't a weight anymore, it was fuel. Every time I doubted myself, I'd remember Mom's words. You'll never be as loved as your sister, and use them to push harder to prove I was more than they'd ever seen. Have you ever found strength in the pain someone else caused you? Turned their doubt into your drive? I was learning how, and I hope you're finding that strength too. Junior year was when I started to feel like I was running, not just walking, toward the life I wanted. It wasn't a straight path. There were still days when doubt clawed at me, when I'd lie awake wondering if I'd ever truly escape the shadow of my family's indifference. But those moments were fewer, drowned out by the hum of possibility. I was no longer the girl who'd hidden her tears in her Ohio bedroom. I was Elise, the writer, the editor, the woman who was carving her own place in the world. One word, one step, one victory at a time. The star necklace Mia gave me still hung on my desk lamp, its silver glint a quiet reminder of how far I'd come. The literary press where I interned became my second home. Rachel, my boss, had a way of challenging me that made me want to rise to the occasion. She'd hand me manuscripts with a raised eyebrow saying, "Let's see what you do with this." I'd spend hours poring over pages, suggesting cuts, catching errors, sometimes rewriting entire sections. My suggestions started showing up in published books, and Rachel noticed. One afternoon, she called me into her office, a cluttered space filled with galleys and coffee mugs. "You're good, Elise," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Really good. Have you thought about publishing as a career?" I blinked, caught off guard. A career I'd been so focused on surviving college, on proving I could make it, that I hadn't dared dream that far. Maybe I said my voice small. She smiled. "Think about it. You've got the instincts." Her words lit something in me, a spark that grew into a flame. Publishing wasn't just a job, it was a world where stories like mine could live, where voices like mine could be heard. I started paying closer attention at work, asking questions about contracts, marketing, distribution. Rachel indulged me, sharing industry secrets over takeout lunches. By spring, she offered me a promotion to editorial assistant, a paid role with actual responsibility. It came with a raise enough to move out of my cramped dorm into a tiny studio apartment off campus. The apartment was nothing special, peeling wallpaper, a leaky faucet, but it was mine. I hung a print of a starry sky above my bed, a nod to Mia's necklace, and felt a rush of pride. This was my space, earned by my work, my fight. At the literary magazine, I was promoted to editor-in-chief, a role that terrified and thrilled me. Leading a team of writers and designers was daunting. I was still shy in groups, still prone to second-guessing myself. But I leaned into it, channeling Rachel's confidence, Ms. Harper's kindness, Mia's fire. Our fall issue won a National Student Award, and at the ceremony I gave a short speech. My hands trembling, but my voice steady. "This is for everyone who's ever felt unseen." I said, my eyes scanning the crowd. "Your story matters." The applause was deafening, and for a moment I felt weightless, like I'd finally stepped out of Clara's shadow and into my own light. My writing was taking off too. I'd been submitting stories and essays relentlessly, collecting rejections like badges of honor. But the acceptances were piling up: a short story in a respected journal, an essay in a women's magazine, a guest post on a popular blog. Each one felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. The blog post about finding strength in being underestimated got thousands of shares. I'd scroll through the comments, my heart racing. "This is my life," one woman wrote. "Thank you for making me feel less alone." Another said, "You're proof we can rise above." I'd read them late at night, tears blurring my screen, amazed that my pain could become someone else's strength. Javier, my poet friend, was a constant cheerleader. We'd meet for coffee between classes, trading drafts and dreams. He'd landed a chapbook deal with a small press, and his excitement was infectious. "You're next, Elise," he'd say, grinning. "You're going to write a book, and it's going to change everything." I'd laugh, brushing it off, but his belief in me was a mirror reflecting a version of myself I was starting to recognize. We weren't dating, our connection was deeper than that. A friendship forged in shared struggles and mutual respect. He'd tease me about my workaholic tendencies, dragging me to open mic nights where I'd read my stories to sweaty, supportive crowds. Those nights standing under dim lights, my voice carrying over the hum of strangers, I felt alive, like I was claiming a piece of the world that had once ignored me. I didn't go home that year, not even for Christmas. My parents called, but the conversations were short-strained. Mom mentioned the mortgage again, her voice tight. "We might have to sell the house," she said. I felt a twinge of guilt, but I was stretched thin, paying rent, tuition, groceries. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it, but I couldn't carry their burdens. Not when they'd never carried mine. "Clara was thriving," Mom said, clerking for a judge. I nodded into the phone, unsurprised. Clara was always thriving. I didn't tell them about my promotion, my award, my published stories. Why bother? They'd never cared before. Instead, I spent the holidays with Javier's family, a loud, chaotic bunch who welcomed me like one of their own. His mom piled my plate with tamales, his sisters grilled me about my writing, and his dad told corny jokes that made me laugh until my sides hurt. Sitting at their table, I realized what a family could feel, like warm, inclusive, real. I wore Mia's necklace, its star catching the light, and thought of how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something. Senior year brought bigger wins. Rachel offered me a full-time job. After graduation, a junior editor role with a salary that felt like a dream. I'd be working on novels, shaping stories that could reach millions. I accepted on the spot, my hands shaking as I signed the contract. Dr. Nguyen nominated me for a university writing prize, and this time I won $5,000 and a feature in the alumni magazine. At the awards dinner, I wore a simple black dress and Mia's necklace, my heart pounding as I accepted the plaque. The dean shook my hand, saying, "You're going places, Elise." I believed him not because of the money or the praise, but because I'd fought for every inch of this moment. I started a blog too, a space to share my essays and connect with readers. It grew faster than I expected, thousands of followers' emails from women who saw themselves in my words. One reader, a single mom in Texas, wrote, "Your story about your family made me realize I can keep going for my kids." I printed that email and taped it to my wall, a reminder of why I wrote. My blog caught the eye of a literary agent who emailed me about a book deal. A book. The idea was dizzying, too big to grasp, but I met with her nervous but curious. "Your voice is unique," she said. "You could tell a story that matters." I didn't sign yet, I needed time, but the possibility was there, shimmering like a star. I was changing not just in what I did, but in who I was. I walked with purpose, spoke with conviction. I'd look in the mirror and see a woman who'd survived, who'd turned pain into power. But the hurt was still there, a quiet ache. I'd think of Mom's words, "You'll never be as loved as your sister," and feel a pang not of sadness, but of resolve. I didn't need their love to be whole. I was finding it in myself, in my work, in the people who saw me, Javier, Mia, Rachel, Dr. Nguyen, my readers. They were my family now, not by blood, but by choice. One night I got a call from Dad. His voice was heavy, tired. "The bank's foreclosing," he said. "We're losing the house." My heart sank. I'd known they were struggling, but this was real. "Is there anything you can do?" he asked. I froze, my mind racing. I had savings, $8,000 from my job, my prize, my blog, but it wasn't enough to save a house. And part of me, the part that still stung from their neglect, didn't want to. "I'll see," I said, my voice flat. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, staring at the starry print above my bed. I didn't owe them anything, but I couldn't shake the image of our old kitchen, the linoleum where Mom had broken my heart. Not yet. I was standing taller, shining brighter, but the past was still there whispering. I wasn't done fighting not for them, but for me. For the girl who'd vowed to be enough. Have you ever built something out of nothing against all odds? Found a way to shine when no one expected you to? I was learning how, and I hope you're finding your own way to glow. The months after Dad's call about the foreclosure were a storm of emotions, guilt, anger, and a fierce determination to keep building my own life. I was 21, a senior in college, standing on the edge of something bigger than I'd ever imagined. My apartment with its starry print and creaky floors was a sanctuary, a testament to my independence. I'd look at Mia's star necklace, now worn smooth, from years of touching it, and feel a quiet pride. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, not because of my family, but in spite of them. Yet the thought of our old Ohio house, the kitchen where Mom had shattered me, with her words lingered like a bruise I couldn't ignore. I threw myself into my final year with a focus that bordered on obsession. The junior editor job at the literary press started before graduation, and I dove in headfirst. Rachel trusted me with high-profile projects, editing debut novels, liaising with authors, even pitching marketing ideas. I'd sit in meetings surrounded by seasoned editors and speak up my voice, no longer trembling. One day, I suggested a campaign for a memoir about overcoming family trauma, drawing from my own pain. The room went quiet, then Rachel nodded. "That's brilliant, Elise." The campaign became a hit, and the author, a woman in her 40s, sent me a handwritten note. "Your insight made my story shine. Thank you." I taped it to my fridge, next to the single mom's email from my blog. These were my trophies, proof I was making a difference. The literary magazine was my other passion. As editor-in-chief, I led the team to another national award this time, with a feature in a major publishing journal. I was invited to speak at a regional conference, a panel on student publishing. Standing on that stage, my notes clutched in sweaty hands. I shared our journey, how we'd built something meaningful from scratch, how stories could heal. The audience, mostly industry professionals, applauded, and afterward a woman from a New York press slipped me her card. "We're hiring," she said. "Keep in touch." I tucked the card into my wallet, my heart racing. New York? The idea was dizzying, a dream I hadn't dared to dream. My blog was growing too, now with tens of thousands of followers. I posted weekly essays, raw, honest pieces about resilience, identity, and finding your voice. Each one sparked comments, emails, messages from women across the world. "Your words got me through my divorce," one wrote. "You made me believe I'm enough," said another. I'd read them in my apartment, the city humming outside, and feel a warmth in my chest. My pain, once a weight, was now a gift, a way to connect, to lift others up. The literary agent I'd met emailed again, pressing for a book proposal. "A memoir," she said. "Your story could inspire millions." I was scared writing a book, felt like baring my soul to the world, but I started drafting late at night. My laptop glowing, my star necklace glinting. Javier was my rock through it all. He'd moved to Chicago for a writing residency, but visited when he could, crashing on my couch with his worn notebooks. We'd talk for hours about art ambition, the families that shaped us. "You're a force, Elise," he said one night, sprawled on my floor with a pizza box between us. "You're not just rising, you're soaring." I laughed, but his words stayed with me. Soaring. That's what it felt like, wings unfurling, carrying me higher than I'd ever thought possible. Mia, now interning at a newspaper in Cleveland called Weekly, her voice crackling with pride. "You're killing it," she'd say. "Don't forget me when you're famous." I'd clutch the necklace and promise I never would. My parents, though, were a distant ache. I hadn't gone home since that disastrous Christmas, and our calls were rare, perfunctory. Mom mentioned the foreclosure, again her voice flat. "We're renting an apartment now," she said. "Clara's helping with rent." Clara, of course. She was clerking at a law firm on track for a prestigious career. I felt a pang, not jealousy, but sorrow for the family we'd never been. I didn't tell them about my job, my awards, my blog. They didn't ask, but Dad's words from that call. "Is there anything you can do?" echoed. I'd check my savings now, $12,000, and wonder if I could have helped. Then I'd remember Mom's voice, "You'll never be as loved as your sister." I'd close my bank app and keep moving forward. Graduation loomed, and with it a flood of opportunities. Rachel offered me a promotion to associate editor, a role with a corner office, and a salary that made my head spin. The New York press called, inviting me for an interview. I flew out my first time in the city and walked through Manhattan in a daze, skyscrapers towering my star necklace tucked under my blouse. The interview went well. They loved my magazine work, my blog, my vision. "You're a storyteller," the hiring manager said. "We need that." They offered me a job on the spot with a signing bonus. I didn't accept right away. I loved Rachel, my team, my life. But the offer was a beacon proof I could go anywhere, be anyone. Back home, I signed the book deal. The advance wasn't huge, but it was enough to pay off my student loans and pad my savings. I wrote the proposal in a fever, outlining a memoir about growing up unseen, fighting for worth-finding light in the dark. The agent was thrilled, predicting it could hit bestseller lists. I was terrified, but I kept writing my apartment filled with sticky notes and coffee mugs. Every chapter felt like peeling back a layer of myself, exposing the girl who'd cried in her Ohio bedroom. But it also felt like healing, like reclaiming my story from the people who'd tried to erase it. I started speaking at events, literary panels, women's conferences, even a TEDx talk at a nearby university. My topic was always the same, the power of your own voice. I'd stand on stage, the star necklace catching the spotlight, and share pieces of my journey, not the full story, not yet, but enough to connect. Audiences leaned forward, nodded, clapped. After one talk, a young woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "My mom always compared me to my brother," she said. "Your talk made me feel like I can keep going." I hugged her, my throat tight. This was why I did it, not for fame, but for moments like that, when my pain became someone else's strength. Financially, I was secure for the first time. My salary, blog income, and speaking fees added up. I moved to a better apartment with a view of the city skyline and a real desk for writing. I bought a new laptop donated to the campus literary magazine, sent Mia a care package with a note for my biggest fan. I even started a scholarship fund at my college, a small one for students from tough backgrounds. I named it the Starlight Fund, after Mia's necklace, a quiet thank you to the people who'd believed in me. But the past wasn't gone. I'd see a photo of Clara on social media smiling at a law firm event and feel a twinge. Not envy, but loss for the sister I'd loved, the family I'd wanted. I'd hear Mom's voice in my head, sharp and certain, "You'll never be as loved." It didn't break me anymore, but it stung, a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. I was independent now, not just financially, but emotionally. I didn't need their approval, their pride, their love. I had my own, hard-won, fiercely guarded, and enough to fill the hollow they'd left. One evening, I got an email from a real estate contact I'd met at a conference. She specialized in distressed properties, including foreclosures. "Your parents' old house is up for auction," she wrote. "Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. The house, the kitchen, the linoleum, the place where I'd been told I'd never be enough. I could buy it, I realized. My savings, my bonus, my advance. It was enough. Not to live there, but to own it, to rewrite its story. I didn't decide right away, but the idea took root, a seed of something bold, something mine. I was at the peak of my rise, stronger than I'd ever been, but the final step was coming. The world was about to see who I'd become, and so was my family. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but I was ready to stand tall, to show them the woman I'd built from their neglect. Have you ever reached a moment where you knew you'd made it? Not for anyone else, but for yourself. I was there, and I hope you find that moment too. The air in the auditorium was thick with anticipation, the kind that hums just before something big happens. I stood backstage, my heart pounding. the star necklace cool against my skin under my blazer. It was a crisp October evening, 6 months after graduation, and I was 22, about to step into the spotlight in a way I'd never imagined. The event was a national literary festival, one of the biggest in the country, and I'd been invited as a keynote speaker, a rising star in publishing the program called Me, Elise, the girl who'd once cried herself to sleep because her mother said she'd never be loved like her sister. I gripped my note cards, the words I'd rehearsed 100 times, blurring in my mind, and took a deep breath. This was my moment, not just to shine, but to show the world and my family who I'd become. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. My memoir Unseen was finished, set for release in a year, and early buzz was strong. Publishers called it raw, inspiring, a voice for the overlooked. My blog had exploded with 500,000 followers, and I was a regular speaker at conferences, my story resonating with women who'd felt invisible. I'd taken the New York job, moving to a sleek apartment in Brooklyn, my starry print now framed above my desk. Rachel, my old boss, had hugged me goodbye, saying, "You're going to change the world, Elise." I was starting to believe her. My salary book advance and speaking fees meant I wasn't just comfortable, I was wealthy. A word that felt foreign but real. I'd even quietly grown the Starlight Fund, awarding scholarships to 5 students, each one a reminder of the girl I'd been. But the biggest move I'd made was secret, known only to my real estate contact and my lawyer. I'd bought our old Ohio house at auction, not to live in, but to own the place where my heart had been broken. The deed was in my name, the mortgage paid in full with my savings and bonus. I hadn't told my parents, hadn't planned to until the festival. They were in the audience, though they didn't know I was speaking. I'd sent them tickets anonymously, a whim, born of equal parts defiance and hope. Clara was coming too, fresh off a promotion at her law firm. I hadn't seen them in over a year, hadn't spoken beyond curt calls. Tonight they'd see me not as the shadow they'd cast, but as the woman I'd built. The MC's voice pulled me back. Our next speaker is Elise Morgan, a visionary editor-writer and advocate for the unseen. The crowd applauded, and I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm, the sea of faces a blur. I scanned the audience, spotting them in the 5th row, Mom, Dad, Clara, their expressions neutral, unaware. My stomach twisted, but I steadied myself, the star necklace a quiet anchor. I began, my voice clear, carrying over the hush. I grew up believing I was invisible, I said. Told I'd never be enough, never as loved as someone else. But I learned that your worth isn't defined by those who overlook you. It's defined by what you build, what you fight for, what you give to the world. I told my story, not all of it, but enough. The pain of being the lesser daughter, the scholarships I'd clawed, for the stories I'd written to heal. I spoke of the women who'd emailed me their lives, touched by my words, and the Starlight Fund, my way of giving back. The audience leaned in, some wiping tears, others nodding. I felt their energy, their connection, and it fueled me. Then I paused, my eyes locking on my family. Mom's face was pale, Dad's mouth tight, Clara's eyes wide. They knew now. This wasn't just a speech, it was my truth laid bare. I could have let those words, "You'll never be as loved," define me. I continued. But I chose to define myself. I chose to build a life where I'm enough, not for anyone else but for me. I gestured to the screen behind me, where a slide appeared, the Starlight Fund logo, with a photo of our old house. "This is where it started," I said. A house where I was told I'd never matter. I bought it this year, not to live in, but to reclaim it. To prove that the girl who was unseen is now the one who decides her own story. The crowd gasped, then erupted in applause, some standing. I saw Mom clutch Dad's arm, her eyes glistening. Clara's hand covered her mouth. Dad stared at the slide, his face unreadable. I kept going, sharing my vision for the fund, expanding it to help more students, turning the house into a community center for young writers. "This is for anyone who's ever felt invisible," I said. "You are enough. Your story matters." The applause was deafening, a wave that lifted me higher than I'd ever been. I stepped off the stage, my legs shaking, my heart full. Backstage, Javier was waiting, his grin wide. "You killed it," he said, pulling me into a hug. Mia, who'd flown in from Cleveland, was there too, tears streaking her face. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, touching the star necklace. I hugged them both, my chosen family, the ones who'd seen me when no one else did. But the moment wasn't over. As I gathered my things, a festival organizer approached. "Your family's asking to see you," she said. My stomach lurched. I hadn't planned for this, hadn't rehearsed what I'd say. But I nodded, steeling myself. They were waiting in a quiet corner of the lobby, the crowd's buzz distant. Mom's makeup was smudged, Dad's shoulders slumped. Clara's expression a mix of awe and guilt. I stood tall, the star necklace glinting under the lights. My blazer sharp, my gaze steady. Elise, Mom started, her voice trembling. We had no idea." Dad cleared his throat, eyes on the floor. "You've done well," he said, the words stiff, like they hurt to say. Clara stepped forward, her eyes wet. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know how much they hurt you. I should have seen it." Her voice broke, and for a moment I saw the sister I'd loved, the one who'd shared cookies years ago. I wanted to feel triumph, to revel in their shock, but it wasn't that simple. Their words stirred the old ache, Mom's kitchen confession, Dad's indifference, Clara's unwitting role. I took a breath, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't do this for you," I said. "I did it for me, for the girl you didn't believe in. I bought the house because I could, because I'm not invisible anymore." Mom flinched, tears spilling. Dad looked away, his jaw tight. Clara reached for my hand, but I stepped back, not ready for that. "I'm not angry," I said, and it was true. The anger had burned out, leaving clarity. "But I'm not here to fix what you broke. I've built my own life, and I'm proud of it." I paused, my eyes meeting Mom's. "You said I'd never be as loved as Clara, but I love myself now, and that's enough." The words hung in the air, heavy final. Mom sobbed softly, Dad's face crumpled, and Clara nodded, tears streaming. I didn't wait for more. I turned and walked away, Javier and Mia flanking me, their presence a shield. Outside the night was cool, the city alive with lights. I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. The confrontation wasn't revenge, it was release, a line drawn between the girl I'd been and the woman I was. The crowd's applause still echoed in my mind, their tears a mirror of my own healing. I'd shown my family the truth, not to hurt them, but to free myself. And in that moment, under the starry sky, I knew I'd won, not their love, but my own. Have you ever stood up to the people who doubted you, not for their approval, but for your own peace? I did, and I hope you find that courage too. The days after the literary festival felt like waking from a dream, one where I'd faced my past and walked away taller, lighter, whole. I was back in my Brooklyn apartment, the city's hum a steady pulse. Outside my window, the starry print above my desk catching the morning light. The star necklace from Mia, now a constant companion, rested on my nightstand, its silver worn but warm from years of holding it through pain and triumph. I was 22, a writer, an editor, a voice for the unseen. And for the first time, I felt like I'd claimed my story, not just from my family, but for myself. But the story wasn't over. There were loose ends, choices to make, and a future to shape, one that didn't need their approval to shine. My memoir, Unseen, was gaining traction even before its release. Early copies sent to reviewers sparked articles in major outlets. The New York Times called it a searing testament to resilience. Oprah's book club shortlisted it for discussion. My agent was thrilled, scheduling signings, interviews, a possible tour. My blog followers, now nearing 1 million, flooded my inbox with messages, women young and old, sharing how my words had helped them stand up to doubting parents, toxic partners, their own fears. I'd read them in my quiet moments, coffee cooling on my desk, and feel a responsibility not just to tell my story, but to keep lifting others. The Starlight Fund was growing too, with donations from my speaking fees and book advance, now supporting 10 students, and planning the community center in our old Ohio house. That house. Owning it was a quiet victory, a way to rewrite the kitchen where Mom's words, "You'll never be as loved as your sister," had cut me open. I hadn't decided what to do with it beyond the center. Sometimes I'd imagine walking through its creaky rooms, the linoleum cold under my feet, and wonder if I could ever see it as just a house, not a battlefield. I'd hired a local team to start renovations, turning the living room into a writing space, my old bedroom into a library for young authors. The deed locked in my safe was a symbol not of revenge, but of reclamation. I'd taken back the place where I'd been told I was less and made it a beacon for others who felt the same. My family, though, was a question I hadn't answered. After the festival, they'd tried to reach me. Mom left voicemails, her voice shaky. "Elise, please call. We need to talk." Dad sent a text, brief and awkward. "We're sorry. Let's meet." Clara emailed a long message, filled with regret memories of our childhood, a plea to reconnect. I read it all, listened to every word, but didn't respond. Not yet. Forgiveness felt like a door I wasn't ready to open, not because I hated them, but because I was still learning to protect the woman I'd become. Their apologies, raw as they seemed, couldn't erase years of neglect. I'd spent so long craving their love, their pride, only to realize I didn't need it. I had my own hard-won and fierce. Still, I thought about them, Clara especially. She'd been a child too, caught in our parents' favoritism, not the villain, but a bystander who hadn't known better. I remembered her sneaking me cookies, lending me her scarf, cheering when I won that scholarship. Her tears at the festival, her whispered, "I'm sorry," stayed with me. I didn't know if I could rebuild with her, but I didn't close the door entirely. Mom and Dad were harder. Their faces in the auditorium, pale, shocked, ashamed, were seared in my mind. But so was the kitchen, the socks at Christmas, the endless Clara's doing this, Clara's doing that. I wasn't ready to let them back in, and maybe I never would be. That was okay. My worth didn't depend on their validation anymore. One morning, I got a call from my lawyer. "The house renovations are ahead of schedule," she said. "And there's something else. Your parents reached out to the real estate agent. They want to know why you bought it." My heart skipped. I hadn't told them about the purchase beyond my speech. Hadn't expected them to dig. "What did you say?" I asked. "Nothing," she replied. "It's your call." I sat on my couch staring at the starry print and felt a pull not to explain but to act. I'd bought the house to reclaim my story, but maybe there was more to it, something I hadn't seen until now. I flew to Ohio the next week, not to see my family, but to visit the house. It was a crisp fall day, the leaves golden, the air sharp. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Its paint still peeling but scaffolding, and workers signaled change. I walked through my boots, echoing on the hardwood. The kitchen was gutted new tiles waiting to be laid, but I could still see it, the counter where I'd gripped so hard, my knuckles turned white. Mom's lavender perfume lingering. I stood there, the star necklace, heavy around my neck, and felt a release like the air itself was letting go of old ghosts. This wasn't their house anymore. It was mine, and soon it would be the community's. As I left, I made a decision. I called my lawyer and asked her to draft a letter anonymous to my parents' new address. It included a cashier's check enough to cover their apartment rent for a year, easing the strain of their move. No note, no signature, just the money. I didn't do it for their gratitude or to fix what was broken. I did it for me to close a chapter without bitterness, to prove I could give without needing anything back. It wasn't forgiveness, not quite, but it was peace. I imagined them opening it, confused, maybe hopeful, and felt a quiet satisfaction. They'd never know it was me, and that was the point. My power wasn't in their recognition, it was in my choice. Back in New York, I poured myself into my work. The memoir's release was approaching, and I was editing a novel at the press, a debut by a young woman whose voice reminded me of my own. I spoke at more events, each one easier, my story flowing like a river. Javier visited his chapbook, now a local hit, and we celebrated with cheap wine and big dreams. Mia came too, her journalism career taking off, and we laughed like we were 17, again, the star necklace a bridge between past and present. They were my family, not by blood, but by love, and that was enough. One night alone in my apartment, I pulled out the necklace and held it to the light. It was scratched, tarnished, but beautiful, a symbol of everything I'd carried: pain, hope, triumph. I thought of the girl I'd been crying in her Ohio bedroom, and the woman I was now building a life that mattered. I didn't need to be loved as much as Clara. I didn't need to be anyone but Elise. I tucked the necklace into a small box, not to forget it, but to honor it, a relic of my journey. I didn't need to wear it anymore. Its light was inside me now. As I look back, I see the truth. Your worth doesn't depend on someone else's validation. Not your parents, your siblings, your partner, or the world. It's in you, waiting to be claimed, fought for, loved. I'm still writing my story, new chapters, new dreams, new ways to lift others. The community center will open soon, a place for young writers to find their voice, and I'll be there, the starlight in my heart, guiding the way. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive my family, but I've forgiven myself for needing them once. That's the victory that matters. So I ask you, sitting there watching this, maybe feeling unseen or undervalued, what's your star necklace? What's the thing that's carried you through the dark, reminding you of your light? Hold it close, but know this: you don't need it to shine. You are enough just as you are, and your story is worth telling. I'm living proof of that, and I believe you can be too.